welcome to our meeting. Half of you probably know why you're here, the other half probably don't. Over the past year, I've been working on a plan with Marcus and his team. Marcus from California, he flew in last night for the meeting. It's from Ambrose. So to the reason that you're here, which I kind of started to imply at the Christmas party speech, was I've converted the company into something called an ESOP, which you might be asking yourself, what the heck is an ESOP? An ESOP is a trust that holds all the shares of the company, of the stock, on behalf of all the employees. So it's not stock that's publicly traded, it's just available to company employees. So basically, the company funds the ESOP annually. It costs everyone that works here nothing. And it's kind of like a 401k plan, but you never put any money into it. So with each passing year, employees receive more and more shares of the company. And hopefully, if everybody plays along, does their job, goes a little bit of extra effort, it grows in value over time, adding to everybody's retirement at some point whenever they retire. So the people who are here in the first couple of years, it's kind of like when you start at Snapchat when it has 2 employees and then grows. People who are here early are the guys who really benefit from this plan, the guys and gals. At retirement, you sell your shares back to the company, and the next tier of people that are coming in, the young 20s, those next tier, take over. So hopefully this plan also is going to allow us to grow, also to attract top talent, go to somebody wants to come over here, make the same, you're in the union. And by the way, guys that are in the union, it's everybody from a mechanic. As soon as you become a mechanic, you're in the plan. So make the same union money and still get a piece of the company's shares. So you might ask yourself, why the heck is he doing this? I ask myself the same question. Luckily, since we took this company over, it's grown each and every year. Every week I say, all right, you're 45. What are you going to do? This is bigger than you. There's 100 people working here. Where do you go with this? How do you recruit the next level guys? This goes on and on and on every day in my head. So I said, I need a plan. This is going back about 18 months ago. I said, I need a plan. What's my plan? How do I do this? How do I continue to grow? As some of you know, I put everything I had into this company. Every dollar, every retirement plan. I've mortgaged. At points I had multiple mortgages on my house to get, no one here probably knows any of that, but what I did to get here was, I probably, I even scared myself at some points for what I've done. But, so what do? Do I sell to private equity? Do I sell to our competitor? Do I take more loans on to continue to grow this place? What do I do? That's when I ran into, these guys. And Ambrose is the name of their company. And we created this plan so when you do this plan, it really gets you access to banks. And they know there's 7,000 ESOPs in the world. And they know when people start to get a piece of the action, profits go up, and efficiencies go up, inefficiencies start to fall out of the company. There's data, which Marcus will talk about, on how companies that are run with an ESOP are, at the end of the day, more profitable. So, all the big companies, Schindler, Otis, they call me every week. They have someone from the office. We want to buy you. We want to buy you. We want to buy you. So I used to say to myself, should I do it? What does this mean for the company? And we all know, some of us who've been through it, I've been there, Manny's been there, Scott, Richie, right? So it's what happens. So I would say, all right, what happens if we sell the company? They're going to cut jobs. They're going to look for efficient. They're going to do a lot of things that would hurt the culture that we've created here. And it's not really what I wanted. 45 years old, I want to continue to work. I want to continue to operate the company. And one of my big things was preserving a legacy. And, I grew up in the industry, and I think that my family would be happy that I did this, because when I'm gone, like I said, this is bigger than me now. I might run it, work a lot of hours, but at the end of the day, what's 15 years look like? What's Hector? What's all the younger guys? What are these guys who are in their 20s? In 15 years, I sell it and it's gone? Grant, you'll be retired before me. So I thought long and hard about doing this, and I've spent almost a year to get here. So lots and lots and lots of time was spent to get here. So I've been blessed. I've been blessed with a great family and parents, and they've always taken care of others, and I want to pay it forward and give all of you an opportunity to really have some extra money in the future. And it's all based, sky's the limit. Sky is honestly the limit. So we've done projections and models and all this stuff of what somebody's retirement would look like in 5, 10, 20 years. But that means nothing, because overall, this company in 20, 30 years, who knows? We could be whatever we make this company. It's literally, as I went on with this, I'm like, well, where are we going to go? Bigger than me. You could be in 20 cities in 20 years from now. It all depends on what somebody and the efforts of all these people combined at this company together really pushes this company to wherever we want to go with it. So I'm happy to announce that as of November 15th, everyone in this room, excluding helpers, the helpers, when they become a mechanic, will automatically be enrolled in the plan. Welcome. All of you are now owners of this company, as well as employees. So congratulations. So Marcus, you can take over from here.
So how about that speech, huh? Pretty good. My job here today is to explain in more detail what this ESOP thing is all about and what it might mean to you in the future. First and foremost, to answer the questions that you might have, okay? This is not going to be your only opportunity to ask questions. You don't have to absorb everything here today. We'll give you more information that you can take home with you as well, and think about and digest over time. So no pressure, okay? But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Because this is being recorded, if you do ask a question, I'll repeat the question. I'll try to remember to repeat the question so that it's picked up on the recording, okay? So let's get going. An ESOP was created, as Chris said. 100% of the company's stock was transferred to this ESOP trust, making all of you employee owners. Why do companies do this? Okay, several reasons. Keep the company independently owned and operated. Chris alluded to that. He had other options that would have fundamentally changed the company. An ESOP does not. Okay? It creates a long-term buyout plan for the former ownership, right? And provides a plan to retain, motivate, and very importantly, recruit future employees to this business by offering something that people aren't going to be able to find anywhere else. Then, this gives all of you the opportunity to participate in all of the upside potential that this company can generate. Chris gave a good example. Snapchat with 2 employees, you're getting in on the ground floor, right? And then this is a sustainable ownership structure going forward. What do I mean by that? Every privately owned company, sooner or later, has to be sold. Why? Because people don't live forever. People don't work forever. Something has to happen when a company is privately held. One alternative is this employee ownership trust, right? There's always going to be employees, and so the employee trust can always be the shareholder. It means that the company never has to be sold. You can maintain independence far into the future. So there was a transaction that occurred to negotiate this transfer of stock to the ESOP. All of the employees were represented in that by a professional trustee that does nothing but employee ownership transfers professionally. We'll go into more detail on that as we go on. that trustee had his own legal and financial advisors to make sure that everything was completely fair, arm's length, independent, and for the exclusive benefit of the employees. So again, what I want to accomplish today is, what is this thing? How does it work? And what does it mean to you? If we can accomplish those three things, I'll be happy. First and foremost, what does ESOP stand for? It stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan. ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Plan. It is a retirement plan. Congress put these in place with the idea that they would help employees generate wealth through the places that they work for. It's subject to a body of law called ERISA. Stands for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. That was passed in 1974, 45 years ago. It's when ESOPs were created. They've been around for a long time now. And they've passed the test of time, so to speak, and have only gotten better since then. There was a very interesting economist back in the 50s in the Bay Area of San Francisco, a guy named Louis Kelso, who thought that capitalism was great, but the only problem was that there's not enough capitalists. There's not enough people, not enough workers in America that have access to capital that they can invest and grow. So his idea was, what if you could earn that capital through your service, through your labor, right? What if you could turn your efforts into your capital? And that's how he got the idea for ESOPs. He got the ear of a very influential senator named Russell Long, who was the chair of the Senate Finance Committee at the time that ERISA was passed. And the two of them almost single-handedly created ESOPs and got those inserted into federal law. So a little interesting backstory there. The idea here is that you are the greatest asset of the company, as is the case in almost all companies in America. So what if we can recruit, retain, motivate, and build wealth for that human capital of the organization? At last count, there's about 6,600 ESOPs around the country in any kind of industry you can think of. It's not kind of pigeonholed to certain kinds of businesses. 13 to 14 million workers around America have access to an employee stock ownership plan benefit. You are among, and I'll get into more detail on this later, your company is among the elite of that group. Why do I say that? There's a lot of ESOPs out there that only own a small portion of the company. They own 5%, 2%, maybe 30%. There's only a minority of ESOP companies where the ESOP owns 100% of the business. And that is the case here. So you are among the elite of the employee ownership community. Okay? And there's some special benefits that come along with that. Studies have shown that ESOP-owned companies tend to outperform non-ESOP-owned companies. There's not a lot of surprise there, I don't think. How many of you have ever rented a car? Show of hands. Most of you, okay? How many of you have ever washed the car before you returned it? Anybody? Usually nobody does that. I did have one person once who did, and I had to ask, why did you wash the rental car? He had taken it. Oh, that's dark. Serial killer. Jeez. Okay, this guy was on vacation in Hawaii and taking the Jeep off-road and got it covered in mud, and he was embarrassed to return it that way to the rental agency. The point here is that most people wouldn't do that. Most people wouldn't wash a rental car because they don't own it, right? Why bother? Versus when you own your car. When I was 16, my first car was a piece of junk. I washed it 2 or 3 times a week, right? That thing was spotless all the time, even if the bumper was falling off, right? That's the difference between owning something versus not, right? So it's no surprise to me, at least, that employee-owned companies tend to significantly outperform other types of businesses. I put up here a list of some of the companies that are employee-owned. Not sure if you've heard of any of these. Publix supermarkets, maybe you've heard of them. I don't think they come this far north. They are here, Publix is here. The largest ESOP-owned company in the nation, 180,000 employees that are owning that company. The company is 100% owned by its employees. Great success story, okay? Everyone there, from the checkout clerk to the grocer to the produce man, they're all owners of the company. They're making a lot of money. There's a lot of, if you noticed on the top right, a lot of breweries that are employee owned. And I asked myself why that is. One reason is that my partner happens to really enjoy beer and is a part owner of a brewery himself. But the real answer is that they tend to treat their employees like family. There's a very strong desire to remain independent and not be absorbed into some large, international company. They want to keep their control of their own destiny. So, if you share any of those attributes, then you're in good company, okay? So lots of different kinds of companies, both household names and not household names, have tried this. I thought it might be helpful for a frame of reference to compare an ESOP to a 401k. People kind of understand what 401ks are generally, so might be a good comparison. First of all, to enter the ESOP, to become eligible to enter the ESOP, you have to be at least 21 years old. You have to work for 12 months with the company. You have to have at least 1,000 hours of service in that 12-month period. As Chris mentioned, the union employees are included in this plan. That's significant by law because the union employees have already collectively bargained for their retirement benefits through their labor union. The company has no obligation to provide them any additional retirement benefit. Right? It would have been possible to completely exclude the union from this plan. But Chris chose to include, thought that was very important for the culture of the business, that everybody was in this, except for the helpers, right? Once you become a mechanic. Also, as he mentioned, you don't put anything into this. It says employee contributions, none. That's very important. This costs you nothing. It's in lieu of nothing. You're not asked to sacrifice anything for the success of this plan other than your time, energy, service, your labor that you're already contributing, okay? So this will cost you nothing. It takes nothing away from you. 401ks, on the other hand, are primarily funded with your own contributions, right? You get a tax benefit if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of your paycheck and put it into that plan. You don't have to pay taxes on it, right, until you take it out years down the road. So that's a very nice tax savings for the employee. And so it's a good thing to do that if you can. But it is mostly your own money that's in the 401k. Secondly, what do 401ks invest in? They invest in mutual funds. Well, what the heck is a mutual fund? It's a basket, a collection of publicly traded companies and some corporate debt and different kinds of companies. But you don't really have any ability to control the performance of a mutual fund, do you? You can't influence that in any way. ESOPs, on the other hand, invest in your company. And each and every one of you has obviously the ability to influence the outcome for your company day in and day out. Okay, so this is something that you can actually affect. Finally, there's a concept called vesting. The idea here is that because this costs you nothing and is an employer-provided benefit, the company's willing to put stock in your participant account each year, but asks you to stick around for up to 6 years and earn into that account over time. What does this accomplish? Hopefully it accomplishes a more stable workforce, reduces turnover. If you can do that, if you can reduce turnover and hold on to the people that you want to hold on to, that's going to be good for everybody because that will increase company performance, it will increase the success and the profitability of the business, And then all of you will benefit from that from a higher share price since you are now the owners. Okay? So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Any questions so far? Happy to entertain any questions you have. Yes.
Simple question. Are we going to get a copy of these slides?
Are you going to get a copy of these slides? Yes, that's partly why it's being recorded. That's partly why it's being recorded. So not only you can review it again, but the rest of the employees and even future employees, right, will have something to point back to. And as I also mentioned, we're going to give you more information. There's a document called a summary plan description. It's about 20 pages long. Goes into a lot more detail than this about how all of this works. I encourage you to take that, study it, take it home to your significant other, if applicable, have them ask you questions about it, see if you can figure this out together. And then you can upstream any questions you have about this after I'm gone to Chris. He's got my number on speed dial, right? So I'll be able to answer any questions that you have. Great question, thank you. All right, so how does this work? Well, the company established this thing called an ESOP. What does that mean? It's just a big stack of paper, okay, that sets forth all the rules. This ESOP has a trust. Okay, what is a trust? Just like in the non-ESOP world, a trust is a legal entity. Think of a corporation or an LLC or these different kinds of legal entities. A trust is one of those things. It has its own bank account. It has its own tax ID number. It is a legal entity recognized by both federal and state law. Okay? This trust, as the word implies, why is it called a trust? Because you are trusting somebody to take care of an asset on behalf of somebody else, for the benefit of somebody else. Okay? So let's break that down. What's the asset? Well, the asset is this company. Okay? All of the stock of this company is held in this trust. Who are the people that benefit from it? Who are the beneficiaries of the trust? All of the participants in the plan are the beneficiaries of the trust. And then by law, every trust has to have a trustee, the one who is entrusted, right, to care for these assets. And you have a professional ESOP trustee that I'll talk about more in a little bit. So then once all these shares are in the trust, over a long period of time, they're allocated to your individual accounts. Okay, year by year. How does that happen? What's the math? Okay. Well, if we allocate, see, easy numbers, 25,000 shares in a year, if you happen to earn $30,000 and if we added up everybody's compensation and it were $3 million, that would be 1%. So if we release 25,000 shares for allocation in a given year and you're 1% of the payroll, you're getting 1% of those shares or 250. That makes sense? So it's all just based upon payroll. Why is that? As people advance and grow within the company and become more valuable to the company, we also want to give them additional equity in the company so that they have even more motivation to help the company grow and succeed. Okay? So as you advance within the company, your rewards increase as well in the form of stock ownership. Once these shares are placed into your participant accounts, you then have to vest in those shares over a 6-year period. The vesting is a one-time only event. So even though we're putting new shares in your account every year for the foreseeable future, once you get through the 6-year vesting table, you're forever vested in all those shares and all future shares. Okay, it's not like you have to start over with each grant each year. Okay, it's a one-time deal, vesting. Once you're vested, they're yours. Okay. How do you earn a year of vesting credit? It's every year in which you work at least 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours gets you a year of vesting credit. To put that in perspective, if we are working 40-hour work weeks and there's 52 weeks in a year, that's 2,080 hours possible. So it's not hard to get to 1,000. It's less than half time. Okay? Less than half time. Also, if you leave the company due to death, disability, or retirement, you automatically become fully vested, regardless of where you are on that chart. Okay. Death and disability being the non-preferred routes. Okay. Retirement's okay. Okay. So the whole idea is to get people to stick around as long as we can. Now, we're not naive enough to think that everybody is going to finish their careers at this company. That would be wonderful if they did. Well, in some cases it'd be better if they left, right? But the beauty of this is that because it is a tax qualified plan, if you do leave the company with a vested benefit, you're able to roll that over to an IRA or to your new employer's 401k, right? So this is a portable benefit that you can take with you. We'll cash out your shares, so you'll be taking cash into your next retirement plan, right? But this is something that you can build as you journey through your professional careers, right? If you make it all the way to age 65 with pride and service, fantastic, right? You're going to have the biggest accounts, all right? So there are 3 ways to grow your account value through the ESOP. Number 1, every year we're going to be depositing additional shares into the employee accounts. As I alluded to, that's going to happen over a very long period of time. We have enough stock to allocate for the next 30 years. How many of you are still going to be here in 30 years? Maybe a few. Chris. You don't have to worry about running out of stock, okay? There will be stock to allocate for the next 30 years. I always get the question, though, well, what happens in the 31st year? There's no more stock. It's all allocated. Well, by then, we'll be buying back so much stock from the people that have left or retired that comes back into the system for reallocation to future generations of employees. We've found that if we have this kind of 30 to 40 year release period for the shares, it creates that sustainable ownership model that I was talking about. You don't burn through the structure too quickly, right? So every year, more shares get allocated to the employee accounts. The second way to grow your account balance is through this concept of forfeitures. What is a forfeiture? Well, if somebody leaves early, say that somebody leaves after year 4, okay, we'll pay them for 60% of their account balance, but the other 40% gets forfeited. What happens to those forfeitures? They get allocated to everybody else who remained active in the company. Okay, so that's another way that your account can grow in value, benefiting from the people that were more short-term and were not interested in sticking it out, right? Third, and the most important way that you'll build value is through the growth in the value of the company. Over time, you'll see that that's where most of your money will come from, is from the share growth, the value per share. So let me take a sidetrack on that concept for a minute, okay? Because this is an important one. Every year, your trustee, your ESOP trustee, will engage an independent appraiser to determine the value of the business as of the prior year end, okay? Now, there's a lot in there that's important. First of all, who commissions this appraisal? Is it the company? No, it's the independent appraiser of the independent trustee. In other words, they have no agenda. They're not trying to push for an artificially high value to make you all happy. They're not trying to push for an artificially low value so that it doesn't cost much to buy people out. They're right down the middle of the fairway. They've got no skin in the game. They just want to get it right, okay? This appraisal process is extensive. It takes at least a month to get through it every year after the end of each year, and is the result of a lot of analysis and interviews and so on. So that's number one. Number two, I wanted to share with you how the value is likely to play out here. And for this, I'm going to use an analogy, give you a little story time, okay? Imagine if somebody gave you a house, and let's say it's a nice house, say it's worth $500,000, okay? Sounds pretty good, right? But there's a catch. The house is mortgaged. How mortgaged? Fully mortgaged, okay? So 100% of the value of that home is payable to a mortgage holder. Well, now you're starting to think, well, I don't know that sounds like such a great gift, right? My equity is what in that home? 0, right? But what if I told you that this house has a fantastic tenant? This is a tenant that's lived there for years, has a long-term lease agreement, has never missed a payment, and that payment is more than enough to pay off the monthly payment for the mortgage. Starting to feel a little better about it? Okay, this is starting to feel good now, okay? And what if I told you that we're going to pay off that mortgage in at least, say, 7 to 10 years at the most? Okay, that's good, because my mortgage is going to take longer than that, okay? And then what if I told you this house was in a great neighborhood with great schools, low crime, very highly desirable? What's going to happen to the value of that home over time? It's going to grow, right? So, let's say over 7 years we get that mortgage paid off. The house has now grown in value to $700,000. What's my equity now? $700,000, right? I go from 0 to $700,000 in a short period of time. Now that gift starts to feel extremely valuable. In hindsight, I'm very happy to have received that gift, okay? That is very similar to how an ESOP works. The upside is massive, the risk is 0, the potential, sky's the limit, okay? All you have to do is just keep doing what you've been doing. The company's been successful for a very long time and should continue to be so through your collective efforts. Does that make sense? So initially, the value that you're going to see on your first account statement for 2019, yeah, it's going to be pretty low, right? Nice house, fully mortgaged, very little equity. And then you'll start to see what's going to get exciting, and you're going to have to be a little patient. What's going to be really exciting is when you get your second and your third and your fourth account statements. And you're going to see the trajectory of where that share price is going. That's when people start to get excited. One of my friends in the business calls this a get-rich-slow scheme. Okay? So, 3 statements here at the bottom. What does this mean to you? See if this is making sense. As an owner, my shares increase in value if the company's value increases. True or false? True. Okay. 2, the longer I stay with a successful company, the more value I have at retirement. Make sense? True. I should underscore the word successful. Okay? If the company's not successful and profitable, none of this works. If you're not able to pay down that mortgage, the value doesn't increase. If you're not able to improve and grow and build the home, its value is not going to increase either. Okay? So successful is very important. The most important. And then finally, the ESOP assures me that I can sell my vested shares at fair market value upon retirement or upon leaving the company. That one's not fair to ask because we haven't talked about that yet, but the answer is yes. Okay? The answer is yes. So we'll pause after this slide for a moment, ask some more questions. But this is extremely simple, but very powerful. The actions of the employees influence the performance of the company. That is true in every company in America, right? Common sense. What is not true in every company in America is the yellow part. Who's rewarded from that? The employees themselves. In other companies, who's rewarded from that? The owners, whoever that may be, not you. Okay? So I find this to be very powerful because in other companies that I've worked for example, where you're getting pushed very hard to perform better and smarter and more profitably, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, you're just being selfish, right? Because this benefits you, not me, right? Now that is no longer the case in this company. From now on, every time you increase performance, safety, profitability, what have you, it only benefits you. Okay? And your coworkers. All right, so any other questions for now before I get into some more details?
chart?
Sure. Come on up.
So I was thinking about this last night. It has something to do with this chart. If you look at yourself and say, what do I do every day? Every single move that every single person that works here either does two things. It benefits the bottom line or it hurts the bottom line. Every move. And that goes from the person that's riding the truck all the way up to me. It's crazy when you think about the power of that statement. I actually left it out of my speech, but that statement's so powerful because those moves, Rich and I were just talking about something this morning like that. One little inefficiency could, make it, you ordered 10 parts when you should have ordered 5. Wham, there's $5,000. You do this, there's another 5. It's crazy when you think about 95 employees make a few little minor tweaks. What a difference that yellow area can make.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Absolutely. If everybody can do 1% better in some way, and then 95 people do that, okay, tremendous impact on the bottom line and on your stock valuation going forward, which benefits you and only you.
And one other thing, because I don't know, I'd be asking this question, is, so we've talked a lot about the good of being a company owner, but there's also, as a company owner, meaning me, or any other person that's ever owned any company, there's downside risk, right? If 5 years ago I collapsed this place, I lost everything. I owed $3-point-something million in loans, extended my house. Basically, it's called shareholder liability, right? I signed personally on any loan that I've taken. So the difference is, today the company's at such a size where none of you in the room, correct me if I'm wrong, have shareholder liability. So let's say this whole plan goes down. Well, the company goes belly up, bankrupt, we're finished. You guys, everyone in the room, including myself, there's no shareholder liability. So it's not like knock, 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 we need your house. That doesn't exist because the shareholder is the trust, right? We're all beneficiaries of the trust. The shareholder is the trust. So if something was to go wrong, it's basically, all right, close up the trust, and the banks and everybody else that are a part of this, including myself, lose. Yeah.
So following with that line, say the company did start going this way, are you able to still sell it?
Yeah, so there is benefits. So there may be a point, good or bad, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, doesn't matter. At any point, you can say, we didn't get there yet, but there's a board of trust, there's a board that's going to be, for a big decision making, right? So we sit down, we talk annually, quarterly, whatever about this. 5, 10, 20 years down the line, someone says, I'm going to pay you $200 million. I'm just making up a number. We can decide as a group to say, okay, this is the time to cash this thing out. The mothership wants to buy this place for a mega amount of dollars, like you see in the stock market. There's always a time, right? You can say, all right, we're going to make a move and we're going to sell it. Or reverse. It's going the other way and, we got to get out of here. You can make a move. It's just like no one felt any difference the past month, right? We've been to ESOP for a month, right? So it's the same sort of concept. It's just that circle effect flows down the line.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, say it is 6 years down the line, 10 years down the line, and you decide to sell it, how does that work?
So,
You have to-
right, so they would actually buy the trust, or the trust would sell to the competitor. And because of the ERISA and the rules, and jump in, once we go into the legal stuff, I'm not, the legal guy, but the trust, you would all be, all right, you're 0.12568 of the trust, and you're 1.698, and then checks would get distributed to all the beneficiaries. It's almost like when somebody dies and had a trust, and it's like, okay, you're 10% of the trust, you get this, and this guy gets this money. It's very similar to that. So trust shareholder, all employees beneficiaries. So yes, it would just, checks would get written to anybody that's a beneficiary of that trust.
I also had one more question, and it was kind of goes back a little bit. You had mentioned before that anyone who, through the death, disability, or retirement, invested 100%. So if, like the mechanics, some of them will go out at 62, some can retire at 60, they're not at that 6 years at 60, are they 100% vested or?
So that's a good question. So the plan defines retirement as leaving employment after age 65.
After 65,
Okay, so if you want to quote unquote retire at 60, the
If
plan
you're 6 years
the
in.
plan does not consider you retired. You consider you retired. That's fine, but you're not retired. You are subject to the 6-year vesting schedule.
But if you reach that 60, that's 100%.
That's correct. That's correct. So, and you're also right, Chris. Good explanation about what happens. Earlier, I said, the ESOP creates a sustainable ownership model. The company doesn't have to sell. It could sell. Somebody throws stupid money at you. Sure, the company could sell. The only people that would benefit from that are all of you. Whatever you get cashed out for whatever portion of the company you own. Right. So yeah, it could sell.
And on the vesting model, one of the reasons I was trying to get it done before the end of the year is that creates the first year of vest already. So as of December 31st, it's only been a month and a half. Anyone who was working here on September, I think it was September 1st, will hold me that.
Yeah. Well, it's on the next slide.
Oh,
That's
on the next
it's a good segue.
So yeah, segue to the next slide. So
Well,
you all
I'll
have the
skip ahead.
first year of vesting, which is good.
Yeah. So
I'll let you take over from there.
no problem. Well, let me back up, not get too far ahead of myself. I wanted to just say a word about your ESOP trustee. Albie Terrahano is his name at Custos Fiduciary Services. He's interesting because he was the CFO of a large family-owned construction contractor in the Gulf area. And his own family went through an ESOP transaction and transferred their company to employee ownership. And they did this back in 2008. In fact, we did that for them back in 2007, I want to say. Then the recession hit, okay? It was tough times for several years. As CFO, he saw that through, got the company back on its feet. Today, it's still employee owned, extremely healthy, extremely profitable. He became he believes in this concept so much, having lived through it himself with his own family, that he decided to become a professional ESOP trustee. Okay. So, interesting gentleman. I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to meet him in the future. And I'll talk a little bit more about what his role is in this whole process in a minute. He's not everything. He had his own financial advisor out of Chicago and New York. There's a law firm that advised him as well. And then we helped the company, and Chris had our own attorneys, and we administer the plan going forward for your behalf. So there's a small village of professionals here that were involved to make sure that this was done properly. Okay. As Chris pointed out, the plan was made effective retroactively to the first day of the plan year. Anybody that was here on, well, let me back up. That means anyone who's already worked 1,000 hours in 2019 already has a year of vesting credit as we sit here today. So you're already 1/6 of the way through that vesting schedule. Okay. Going forward, and anybody who was here on September 30th automatically enters the plan. Why do we do that? Well, because there's a 12-month waiting period, right, to enter the plan. If we didn't do something special for the first year, there'd be no participants in the first year. Everyone would have to come in the second year, right? So if all of you that were here on that date automatically enter the plan. Going forward, you have to work 12 months, and then you enter the plan on the first day of the plan year, after which you complete that. So let me walk you through that, because people are likely to ask you, new hires, when do I get into this thing? Well, if you were hired, say today, December 13th, 2019, your first year anniversary would be December 13th of 2020, right? Did you work 1,000 hours during that time period? Yes. Were you at least 21 years old? Yes. Okay, so you're eligible. You would then enter the plan on the first day of 2020. That's the year in which you complete that process. So that person enters the plan 1/1/20. Does that make sense? Okay, so pretty easy, right? Once you're in the plan, you then actually have to, on an annual basis, continue to work at least 1,000 hours per year in order to get stock for that year. So just because you're a participant, just because you're in the boat, you're not getting more shares in your account unless you continue to work 1,000 hours per year and remain employed as of the last day of the plan year. So you got to make it to the end of the year and you got to work 1,000 hours in that year. If you do, we'll put more shares in your account. There's an exception to that as well. You'll get used to this acronym, DDR, Death, Disability, Retirement, okay? If you leave the company mid-year because of death, disability, or retirement, even if you didn't work 1,000 hours and even if you didn't make it to the end of the year, you're still going to get shares for that year. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits for that DDR status. Again, we don't like death and disability. Retirement is okay. All right. So let me go through perhaps what's most important to you, how you get paid. Okay. First, I'll preface it with this concept of diversification. One criticism that some people have had of ESOPs is that you got a lot of eggs in one basket, right? Not only are you taking your paycheck from this company, now a big portion of your retirement wealth is related to the success of this company as well. Okay, so what can be done to reduce your risk? Well, there will be ups and downs in the share value. That happens to every company, right? No big deal. I'm getting more shares every year. It goes up, it goes down. I got a long time to wait and see that the shares increase in value. But what if you're approaching retirement age, right? What if there's a big downturn the year before you're supposed to retire, right? That's where it gets scary. That's where we saw in the last recession, a lot of people who thought they were ready to retire wake up one morning and find out they were not ready to retire. And they had to continue working. In many cases, 5 or 10 years longer than they thought they would have to. So how do we avoid that? Once you've been in the plan for at least 10 years, so you've got a pretty good size balance, and you're at least 55 years old, so you can see the finish line, all right, it's out there in the distance, you will have the ability to withdraw up to 25% of your stock account, cash it in. Okay, and you can transfer it to the 401k or to an IRA, or you can spend it, okay? Hopefully you don't do that. But you will have the ability to cash that in so that you can take some chips off the table. And then 5 years later, that percentage increases to 50%. So you will have had the opportunity, by the time you're 60, and in the plan for 15 years, you will have had the opportunity to take half of your risk off of the table and invest it some other way, however you choose to, okay? So that obviously doesn't apply for a while because this is brand new, but it is important to think about, okay? As the company matures a little bit, let's say 8 or 9 years from now, maybe we'll come have another meeting to talk specifically about that, okay? But know that you'll have that opportunity. Otherwise, how do you get paid? Well, everybody gets paid out in 5 equal installments. Okay, so 1/5 per year for 5 years. Why not all at once? Why not just a big lump sum payment? Well, unlike a 401k, what's in that trust? It's not cash. It's not marketable securities. It's company stock. Where does the money come from to buy that stock back? It comes from the company, right? So by putting it in installments, it gives the company time to buy back that stock over time. What's good about that is that so long as you have stock in your account, it's always being revalued as of the most recent value. So even if you're getting paid out over a 5-year period, if the value per share is increasing, every year's payment will be bigger, right? Because when I say 5 equal annual installments, I mean equal in terms of the number of shares, not necessarily the value. If I have 1,000 shares and I'm getting paid out 200 shares per year, it could be, if those shares are going up in value, every single payment is at a higher dollar amount. Does that make sense? Okay. The opposite could be true as well, right? So if the company's going downhill, then still 200 shares per year at a declining valuation, which obviously we would try to avoid, right? The second concept here, again, DDR. Congress assumes that if you are dead, disabled, or retired, you're no longer in the workforce. I think that's a pretty safe assumption for the most part. So this being a retirement plan, this is when you need the money, or your family or your beneficiaries. This is when they need the money. So the payout begins the year after that DDR event. So you get paid out in years 1 through 6 post DDR event. Okay? Yeah.
Sorry. So am I understanding all right? So a year after you retire, you get the payout?
That's right. That's right. If you leave for any other reason, anything other than death, disability, or retirement, it doesn't matter what the cause is, whether it was voluntary, employer initiated, layoff, furlough, doesn't matter, okay? For any other reason, then there is a 5-year delay in that process. You get paid out in years 6 through 11.
I just have one more question.
Sure.
So, like you said, stock goes up and down. Say you retire next year, and you have to wait a year, and the stocks are higher next year. What do they now? Do you get the value of the stocks when you retired, or the value of the
It changes every year. The values changes every year. So long as you have stock in your account, it's always being revalued annually. Okay? Could go up one year, could go down the next year. Okay? To come back to this non-DDR, 5-year wait, years 6 through 11. That sounds like a very long time to wait, right? But remember, this is a retirement plan. Congress actually doesn't want you to get your hands on that money too soon, because if you're not dead, disabled, or retired, they assume that you're still in the workforce, that you're still earning retirement benefits, not spending retirement benefits, right? So you should be happy to leave that money in a successful company where the share value is hopefully going the right direction, right? So even if you're not working here anymore, you're still an employee owner, right? Until you get completely cashed out. The other thing that's important about this is that, and I'll show you in a later slide, ESOPs tend to have significant account balances over time. Most of our plans are paying people out in the mid 6-figure range that have been in the plan for more than 15 years. A lot of money, okay? If we were to pay people out in an immediate lump sum as soon as they leave the company, what would happen? For one, the company might go broke, but let's say we could actually handle it financially. The other thing that would happen is people would quit just so they could get their hands on the dough, right? I've seen this before where people will leave, they'll jump ship just because they've got, $180,000 waiting for them. They go take a job with a competitor so they can get their hands on their ESOP money. Well, that's fatal, right, to the company. You can't have that, right? We can't have your best people with the highest account balances quitting just so that they can access their retirement benefits. Hopefully that 5-year delay is long enough to keep people from doing something stupid to get to their retirement benefits. Does that make sense? Okay. It is possible, 2 other caveats to that. First of all, we will pay small balances out in an immediate lump sum. If it's less than $5,000 vested benefit, there's no sense in hanging on to that for several years. The company will pay that out immediately. The year after they leave, we'll pay that out. Also, the company is free to accelerate this payout schedule if it chooses to. Okay? Can't decelerate it. Can't pay out any slower than this. Okay? But can pay out on an accelerated basis. Why might the company choose to do that? Why might they decide to pay out sooner than years 6 through 11, for example? Any ideas?
If the stock goes up, it's worth less the earlier you sell it.
That's right. Yeah, if the stock is going up in value, it's getting more and more expensive every year to buy those people out, right? So once the company pays off the mortgage and is collecting a lot of cash, sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense to let people continue to ride the train who have already left, okay? So you'll probably see that over time. Most of my clients, maybe 5 to 10 years out, start to accelerate the distribution offers, okay? So we'll see. That's up to the board of directors that Chris alluded to figure out how to best deploy the corporate capital resources, but no slower than this. I mentioned that it can be rolled over. That's very important, right? No taxation if it's rolled over. Okay. A lot of people wonder, how is the company operated now that it's employee owned through this trust, okay? Well, the employees still report to the same managers that they always have. The managers now report to the board of directors. The board of directors is going to become a little bit more formalized, perhaps, than it has been in the past. Chris will be locating an independent director or two to join the board, people who have no financial interest in the business, who can just be objective, calling balls and strikes, right, about what the company ought to be doing and being a resource to the management team, okay? The board of directors reports to the trustee as the shareholder of the ESOP trust, right? Just like any company, the board is accountable to the shareholders. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to act in the shareholders' best interests, right? What's interesting here is notice that this is a double-sided arrow because the trustee is also accountable to the board of directors. In fact, it's the board of directors that appoints the trustee and can replace the trustee if necessary. So if the trustee's asleep at the switch and not holding up his end of the bargain, the trustee can be replaced, okay? The trustee does not get involved in the day-to-day management of the business. This is the green team, okay? The green team runs the business, okay? The trustee is there to ensure compliance. The trustee is there to make sure, are the rules being followed? Is the valuation being done by a competent appraiser? Are the participant statements getting out like they should? Are people being paid when they're supposed to be paid? Right? That's what the trustee worries about. Okay? The trustee knows nothing about this industry. You don't want the trustee involved in the management of the business. Okay? It's the current management team and Chris that has gotten this company to where it is today, and it's that same group of people that will continue to operate the business going forward, subject, of course, to retirement and natural things. There are outside advisors like us and the attorneys that advise that board, and there's this independent appraiser that advises the trustee. But the board of directors and the management team are responsible for the day-to-day operations of the business. All of you also reside at the very top of the stack here, right? Not only are you the employees, you're also the beneficiaries of the ESOP trust. So everything, this whole vertical process is all about the employee owners. It all exists just to benefit the employee owners and your customers and your community, right? It's all about what you guys can do with this company. Any questions about how the company operates or things of that nature? It is possible that you'll be given the opportunity to cast a vote according to the number of shares you own. This happens very rarely. It's what the law calls a major corporate event. What is a major corporate event? A merger, a sale of all of the assets of the business, a liquidation, a reorganization, a recapitalization, a dissolution. Certain legal terms. Essentially, if the company is sold in certain ways, then all of you will be given a presentation about what's being proposed, and you will cast a vote according to the number of shares you have. That's how many votes you get in that process. Don't anticipate that happening. It could, every year we sell probably 2 or 3 of the ESOP businesses that we created a long time ago because, as Chris pointed out, somebody comes along with a stupid amount of money that we can't ignore, okay? Why? Because ESOPs tend to be really well-run companies with a great culture and a great workforce that's highly trained and experienced and motivated. Wow, you look like a great company. So it happens. Any other questions up to this point? We're almost done. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about your trustee. I already kind of did talk to you about what he does. And again, you'll probably have the opportunity to meet him in the future. There is a process that we have to go through in order to get you your account statements, your annual account statements. First of all, the company has to, after the end of the year, close its books, figure out all the accounting, make sure it's all done. From there, it goes to the CPA firm, an outside independent CPA firm, who has to review all of that, make sure it's accurate. From the CPA firm, it goes to the trustee's appraiser, who updates their own valuation analysis. And it's not just about last year's financial performance. It's also about what does management feel like is going to happen in the upcoming, not just year, but 5 years. Okay, and then interviews with management, current market conditions and trends, both macro level and specific to your industry and to your geography. So all of that goes into the analysis to come up with an updated valuation for the company. Once that valuation is delivered to the trustee, he reviews it carefully, has a lot of dialogue with the appraiser to make sure that the trustee's comfortable with it. Once that's done, then it comes to my firm, and we will then do the accounting for the ESOP trust. And we will figure out how many shares to allocate to all of you, how much eligible compensation you have. We'll make all the allocations. We'll do all the compliance testing that's necessary, and we'll produce an account statement for you. Okay. Not going to happen yet, but once you get over 100 participants, actually 120 participants in the plan, so you're close, okay, there's going to be another CPA firm that's going to have to come in and audit the plan itself. Make sure that all of this was done properly. Okay, so lots of checks and balances here. Then we distribute the account statements to you, typically in the second or the third quarter of the year, following the year end. Okay, and then we pay out distributions to anybody who's eligible for a payout. Yes, sir.
That year starts November 15th every year now for now, or it's a...
No, it's still calendar year, January through December. Yeah, November's just when we happen to get the transaction done. Okay. So your first account statements for 2019 should come out May, June, July, in that time frame of 2020. Okay? And then every year, hopefully, we get a little bit better at the reporting process and maybe shave a week off, or two each year. The sooner we can get you the account statements, the better, right? Because you want that feedback about how did the company do, how did the share value grow, and so we want to get it done quickly if we can. All right. Home stretch. This study was done by the National Center for Employee Ownership, and it simply compares, they did a study of about 1,000 ESOP-owned companies who were willing to share all their historical financial information with the association, and they showed that the very same companies, their growth rates in terms of employment and sales almost tripled after they put in their ESOP. Okay? So this is apples to apples, right? It's this company pre-ESOP versus this company post-ESOP. And overall, that whole basket of 1,000 companies, they saw significant growth. Again, I'm not surprised by that. My rental car analogy, right? This is when you rented, this is when you owned, okay? It makes sense. The other thing I'm excited about is this slide here. And this is not to criticize 401ks. I have one myself and I contribute to it, okay? But if you look at the national average of all 401ks in the nation, the average account balance for those that are nearing retirement is less than $50,000. Who here feels comfortable retiring on $50,000? Yeah, and this is not $50,000 a year. This is not a pension. Okay, that's it. Okay. Why is it so low? Any ideas why the national average is so shockingly low for the value of 401k assets? Number one, lack of participation. If you're not contributing to it, there's not going to be much there, right? That's number one. Number two, poor investment decisions. You direct your own investments in a 401k. Human nature, if you're not, trained in financial management, human nature is to buy something because it's done very well in the past. Well, what that means is that it's at a high valuation. And then you hold on to it until it's not doing well anymore. Right? So what did you do? You bought high and you sold low. Right? Which is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do in investments. You're supposed to buy low and sell high. So studies have shown again and again that when people are making their own investment decisions in a 401k, they tend to be not very good decisions. Okay, and then third, people take out loans and hardship distributions from the 401k, and then that further depletes the account balance that's available at retirement. So the answer to 401ks is try to avoid those things, right? So participate, invest in a very long-term horizon, right? Don't buy and sell too frequently, right? Ride things for the long run. And then avoid loans and hardship distributions if you can. All of that said, the national average account balance for ESOPs at that same age group is $350,000. That's substantially better, right? I'm starting to feel a little better with that amount. Now, and I'll say a few things about the ESOP balances. First of all, that doesn't happen overnight, right? We just started, okay? This is a national average of all ESOPs, all 6,600 ESOPs around the country. But over time, I'm confident in saying that you will outperform this. Why do I say that? Because, as I mentioned at the outset, most ESOPs only own a minority interest in the company that sponsors them. Unlike Pride and Service, which owns 100% of the company, right? The ESOP owns 100% of the company. So right there, by definition, you're the elite. You're better than the average, okay? Because your ESOP owns the whole thing. There's a huge tax benefit that comes along with that. When the company is 100% ESOP owned, after a few years, the government agrees to completely eliminate all taxation of the company profits. That's huge. No income tax. No federal or state income tax. What does that mean? That means your cash flow is 50% better than all your competitors after 4 years as an ESOP. That's huge, right? Massively huge. What can the company do with that tax-free cash flow stream? It can grow, right, more quickly than it otherwise could. Maybe can pay better benefits and salaries than it otherwise could. Maybe it can be really, really aggressive on pricing and try to gobble up market share. Make your competitors hate you. I don't know. We'll see what you guys do with that, right? It's a few years out. But for all those reasons, you should significantly outperform the average. Just 2 months ago, I gave a presentation to a company that we did an ESOP transaction for 12 years ago. And they had their first full-fledged retiree that started 12 years ago and made it all the way to age 65. Myrna was a payroll clerk at this company and had never owned a home and drove a beat-up Corolla, okay? And with her permission, they used this big, cheesy Publishers Clearinghouse check and gave her a check in front of everybody for her retirement benefit, $864,000. She was in tears. Her husband came, big cake and party and all that. So this can be very, very powerful over time. As Chris mentioned, we've done a lot of forecasting. We have some ideas about what this might do for you. Time will tell. All that forecasting really means nothing. Depends on your own success going forward. So if you want more information, there's several places you can go. Here's 3 websites that I've listed for you here. The ESOP Association being the largest of the 3. If you're really curious about that tax-free 100% ESOP model, this website right here is really interesting to spend some time out. ESCA.us stands for Employee-Owned S Corporations of America. Every company on here is 100% ESOP owned, tax exempt. You know, so you'll get some really good stories and case studies there. In addition to that, every year, you know, we're going to give you your account statement. On the back side of your annual account statement will be what's called a summary annual report. While your account statement shows you what's in your account, the summary annual report shows you what's in the entire ESOP. The total value of all the ESOP stock, things like that, okay? And then we'll also be giving you a summary plan description, or an SPD, and that's the document that goes into a lot more detail than what we just shared about how everything works, okay? I think all of you that are here in this meeting, you know, are kind of entrusted to try to understand this stuff and help spread the message a little bit. So do take some time to read through that summary plan description. The only other thing, as far as paperwork and enrollment, there's really nothing, because you don't have to take anything out of your paycheck, so we're not asking you to sign anything saying you're going to defer. That doesn't apply. You're not making any investment decisions, so you don't have to fill anything out about that. So really, there is no enrollment process. As soon as you qualify, you're in. That's just the way it is. The only other paperwork that you might want to fill out is what's called a beneficiary designation form. If you know, heaven forbid, you pass away before we can pay you, who should we pay, right? And so, you got some volunteers. Okay, you want to be the designated beneficiary? Give it to him. Oh, okay, cool. I like that. I like that. I'll volunteer too. I mean, if anybody wants, Marcus PK, okay? Marcus PK, 100%. Write that on your beneficiary designation form. Yeah. So with that, you know, congratulations. You're all employee owners. This is fantastic.
In the development of this actually started back, as everybody knows, I'm 45, when I worked for my father in my late 20s. I actually tried to pitch this ESOP idea to him back when I was 29. I said, I really think that if everybody comes to work, I hope to believe that everybody comes to work every day wanting to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing. Over time, maybe things happen, people change, but I always said the power of people, there's so much power in the people if you harness it. And we never went down that route. He sold to a major conglomerate, and I lived through what happened next. The squeeze, there was a lot that, for me, running the show at that point, it was difficult to deal with. So I didn't want to discriminate anyone here. And the reason that I discriminated against helpers was because I want them to achieve. I want to see them, you know what, I'm going to push to be a mechanic and be better for the company. Not just, here's a freebie, I'll stay as a help. I want to see it. So everyone else, I believe that, hopefully I can see this through, that one day I can say, I knew it. The power of the people works. Look at this place. It's awesome. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to say, this guy gets this guy gets that, this person's out. I figured it's powerful, and as much as, for a helper, you got to wait a couple of years to be a mechanic. I think that's even more power to want to learn every day when you show up. And if you don't, maybe this isn't the right place for you. I want the best of the best. I want to recruit the top talent. And I think, wow, where the heck can you go when people start to see this? When everybody in this room and beyond starts to spread, which is already happening because I've had to get this approved to the union. So the word's out. The word is out.
How did that go, if you don't mind me asking, with the union? Was that?
It was, it went well, I guess. We had to explain it. They needed to understand. They got their legal advisors involved. And we showed them the path of how this all works. And all good. Yeah, so it keeps employees in Local 3, right? Because now you're going to see, I'm just going to use round numbers off of a model. Again, this is a model. For every $40,000, $50,000 of, now this is, I'm going to give you some financial terms like annualized over 10 years, right? If you look at 10-year time, the next 10 years, if you were to just say for every $50,000 of compensation, you're probably putting in the model 25 to 30,000 every year for 10 years. in this plan. So make it easy. Somebody that makes $100,000 at the end of 10 years is probably going to be somewhere $750,000. That all, that's, it's not up there anymore, that all plays on all of us, making sure that we do. The company has to be, we have to call it, we need growth. But who needs growth if growth is just growth? We need profitable growth and good growth and the right people coming in to take that growth, right? We just can't triple the company with the same employees. No, we need the right people. So it's a model. I have to look out 30, like Marcus said, 30, 40 years worth of shares, right? I probably won't be here in 30 or 40 years, but it's how do you get there? What's the model look like? So going back to when I started 10 years ago, I can say I never looked at the place like, oh, where am I going to be? What's going to be in my pocket in 10 years? What's going to be in my pocket in 30 years? I really didn't. I looked at it like, let me kick some ass and it'll show up. Let me bust my ass every day. I still bust my ass. I worked till 10 o'clock last night. I want success for the company. I want success for everybody. And why not share it? Because if you share a bigger piece, if there's a bigger piece of there's a bigger company, you might be getting a smaller piece, but wow, that's a lot bigger than it would if I just ran this on my own. So in closing, I think if you really focus on that performance and what can I do, and as time goes on, I visually see like ESOP committees, and maybe there's a guy from the field and a guy from and we talk, how do we make it better? What do we do? How do we get this company to be the best of the best? Because we have a tool that nobody else in the New York, New Jersey elevator market has. And if we use it right, we all win.